Hi, I'm Jancy McPhee, and I'm the Executive Director of SciArtExchange. Welcome to Design Your Habitat. Today we're happy to have Amy Ross, NASA spacesuit engineer, and she's going to talk to us today about designing a spacesuit. Amy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jancy. I'm glad to be here.
So let's jump right in. What do you do at NASA?
Well, my title is I'm a NASA spacesuit engineer. And usually I do advanced spacesuits, which means I'm looking at how to build a spacesuit for the future, for the things beyond what NASA is doing today. So I'm thinking about going to the moon, and I'm going on to Mars, and maybe beyond that.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool. And how did you end up becoming a NASA advanced future spacesuit engineer?
It's not the job you normally think about when you're trying to pick a career in school. I have been involved in the space program for a long time, but because my family's involved in it, but when I was in high school and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to college, what I wanted to study, what I wanted to do, there were three things. I was interested in animals because I love my animals. I have a dog and 3 cats right now, and fosters. And then I like to read, so I thought about being a librarian. And then I thought, well, I also want to do something that I think is exciting and productive for the country and humanity. And so I thought about the space program. It helped that I've been around it, but it is one of those things that's pretty inspiring. I tried being a veterinarian. I worked at a vet clinic one summer and decided that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do every day. And then I thought I could surely be a librarian. That wasn't a real reach for me with my skills. So I wanted to do something that really challenged me a little bit. And that was getting into the space program. I needed to become an engineer. Not everybody that works in the space program is an engineer, but a lot of the people are. But we have accountants, we have firefighters, we have all kinds of different people that work in the space program, but a lot of them are engineers or scientists. And so I got a mechanical engineering degree, and then I did a program it's now called Pathways Internships. And that means you get to come work at NASA and try different pieces of NASA out and see which one you like. So I got to work in the astronaut office for a while. I got to work at White Sands test facility where they blow things up for fun. And it was fun, and I did. I blew things up. I used shape charges. That was neat. But then I worked one summer with a gentleman named Joe Cosmo, which if you're going to work in the space program, you need a name like Joe Cosmo. And his job
Did
was
he plan
design.
that? Is he like a Los Angeles movie star?
He did not, and he did not. He is not. Just his name. Yeah, but it works out great. And he'd been designing spacesuits, ended up retiring with 50 years of experience designing spacesuits. And so I got to work with him, and it was fun. I got to touch my hardware. Spacesuits are right there in the lab every day, and I just really enjoyed doing it. So that's how I started being a spacesuit engineer.
That is really pretty cool. And actually, I really liked your story about thinking about what your passions are and then actually trying them out, because I think that's really great advice for everybody who's trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, and maybe they'll even change their minds. They'll be on one path and then they'll change their mind, and it's okay as long as you have a path and you can test it out and see if it's the right fit for you. So that sounds pretty cool. So what does a spacesuit really need to do, and are there different types of spacesuits? What are the kinds of things you have to think about when you design a spacesuit? What are its functions?
Yeah, the two big jobs of a spacesuit are to keep you alive in a extreme hostile environment, which the vacuum of space and planetary surfaces are. And then the other job is to allow you to do work, okay? So my kinds of spacesuits are called extravehicular activity spacesuits. And that means you're doing activity extra or outside of the vehicle, extravehicular activity spacesuits. Like you have extracurricular activities in school, which are activities outside of your curriculum or your schoolwork, like sports and clubs. Well, I work on spacesuits that are extravehicular activity spacesuits. So when you're gonna go outside of your spaceship to go do some work, that's the suit you're gonna put on. There's another kind of spacesuit called a crew survival suit. You usually wear those when you launch and land. Those are the orange ones, mine are the white ones. And the orange ones make sure you stay alive when you're inside the capsule, and it's a backup to the cabin pressure system. So if you lose your cabin pressure, like you hear about on an airplane, then your crew survival suit will keep you alive. It's orange also because it's a survival suit in that if you get lost, if you land somewhere you weren't supposed to land, and especially if you're in the water, then they can find you easier. That's why it's that bright international orange color.
Instead
Mine's
of
white.
that lime green fluorescent thing. You know,
Yeah,
that's the other color that you look for when you're trying to be saved.
right, right. Or magenta pink. It's a very good one too. Land
Right.
survival. That's the one you
Those
want.
those sort of semi-fluorescent colors.
Yes, very fashionable and effective. So, but mine are white because of the thermal extremes in space. And
Oh, that's
so,
a good question. I was going to ask why they're white. So
yeah,
it helps to reflect. What is why is white helpful?
yeah, you're exactly right. You have different kinds of energy coming toward you, and there's different ways that thermal energy transfers or moves. And one of the ways is that you have the radiative energy or the heat waves coming at you. And you know, when you go outside in the summertime in a black t-shirt, all that just gets absorbed into your t-shirt and makes you hotter. And so what you want to do is wear your light colors in the summertime so that your t-shirt or your clothes reflect that light and keep you cooler so it's not absorbed. So that's why our spacesuits are white, same reason.
So these spacesuits, you know, this series is called Design Your Habitat. So we've been talking a lot about different kinds of habitats. We've been talking about designing a habitat that would be on a planetary surface, or one that would be orbiting a planet, or, you know, like the International Space Station is right now. And a spacesuit is basically a personal mobile habitat, and it's because of that, it's got to be able to carry out a bunch of functions. So what are some of the functions that you think about when you create your spacesuits?
Right. So one of the big things I think about is I get to pretend that I'm an astronaut and imagine what you would do when you're an astronaut on the surface of Mars. What work are you going to try? So a lot of times we kind of do the keep you alive job and make sure that just happens, right? So the astronauts don't have to think about that, because they shouldn't have to think about that, because you should just keep them alive. That's, you know, you fail if you don't do that. And so then it's really giving them a tool in the spacesuit as a little mini spaceship that allows them to go out and do their job that they need to do. So I get to think about, okay, I'm on Mars. What am I going to do? And then make sure my spacesuit can let me do those jobs.
Right. And when you keep saying it's like a little mini spaceship, except it's something you can wear. So that means it's got to do some things like be able to give you the air that you need to breathe and help you to have mobility, right? You've got to be able to walk. And I think at one point you did this with your hands. I think gloves are pretty important, aren't they?
Yes. So you're saying all the right things. You need to give your astronauts oxygen. You need to keep some pressure on their body. You need to protect them from the thermal extremes. You need to keep the dust on the planetary surface from, you know, putting a hole in your spacesuit, or if you fall on a rock from getting a hole in your spacesuit, or if you know, fall down from getting a hole in your spacesuit. There's lots of things you don't want to have happen. But then above that, giving them the mobility in their body parts, because the human body is very incredible. So while we're creating this environment, we're also creating the capability of doing the work in that, you know, external environment that's not so healthy. So yeah, the gloves are super important because your hands are really, really incredible. And you know, you've got to think about wearing ski gloves and trying to do surgery. And so we're trying to combine those two things together. Excuse my dog.
He didn't listen to you. You told him he
No,
needed to be quiet.
yeah, they're squirrels, I'm sure.
Yes, I totally understand that. My cats are always interested in squirrels and lizards.
Yes.
So we have been using particular spacesuit design for quite a while for the shuttle and the ISS. And you mentioned that you're starting to prepare basically the next generation of spacesuits. So we're going to have new vehicles taking us out of Earth, vicinity. And we're also going to be visiting new destinations, returning to the moon, spending a long time there, living and working on the surface of the moon. And a lot of the things that we learn are going to prepare us to do similar things on Mars. So what are some of the things in particular that you're needing to focus on that might be a little bit different, either about those upcoming vehicles or some of those new surfaces and jobs that we have to do? Are there any particular things you can talk about that you're focusing on?
Yeah, so we are doing something very exciting right now. Most of my career has been spent doing advanced development. So imagining sometimes somebody might want to use my spacesuit to go do something different than going to the International Space Station. Right now, though, I have been told I have to get a suit ready to go to the moon. We are going to go to the moon in 2024, and so I have to deliver my spacesuit ready to do work on the moon in 2024. So yes,
No pressure.
no pressure, no hurry, just get it done. So we are, it's moon or bust at this point. So we are working really hard to think about those specific environmental issues associated with the moon. So the moon isn't that different from International Space Station, except a few big differences, like there's dust, there's dirt, and the dirt on the moon's pretty much like broken glass. So it's really abrasive, which doesn't always play well with spacesuits. So we have to try to protect our spacesuit from that, but we can do that. And then we need to think about being able to use a spacesuit on the moon for longer periods of time. So we don't want to just go back to the moon and do a quick moon mission and come home and be done. We want to be able to go to the moon and be able to stay on the moon. And so creating a spacesuit that's durable over that long period of time and allowing the astronauts to do more jobs, different jobs than they ever did during the Apollo program is what we're working on now.
Right, that sounds great. And hopefully, I am also in the space neighborhood, so I know that some of those suits are hard to work in, and just some of them don't always fit everybody perfectly. But I think you guys are working really hard to make them easier to use.
Yes, very much so. That's always my job, right? Because my thought is I've got a human in the middle of my design, and I really want to allow my spacesuit to allow the human to do human things. So I want to make sure that my human has to think and work as little as possible around the spacesuit. So when you want to move your arm from here to here, you should be able to move your arm from here to here like you naturally would, and not have to kind of do something because your arm is designed funny. And so that's part of what we do. Also, like you mentioned, we are building suits different from what we use on the International Space Station today, because the International Space Station is in microgravity. So you're floating in space. So go out to your swimming pool and use weights or pool noodles, and then you can pretend you're in space with neutral buoyancy, which is you can get in the middle of the pool and not sink to the bottom or float to the top. And that's like what astronauts feel in space. And so the spacesuits are designed specifically for that microgravity environment. And so the lower torso, the pants of the suit, are really pretty stiff, and they have big clown shoe boots that don't bend and aren't good tennis shoes when you want to go on a hike, because all they have to do is get into a foot restraint and then hold the astronaut in the foot restraint so they can work with their upper body. So that's one of the reasons the gloves are so important, because on the International Space Station, this is how you move. When you go to a planetary surface, though, when you're in a partial gravity environment, or 1/6 Earth gravity, which the moon is, then you need to be able to walk, kneel, be able to get up if you fall down. And so that means our pants of our suit are going to be very different, because they account for that specific change in the environment, which is the gravity environment.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. We've had a couple of other guests talking a lot about how we know quite a lot about living in microgravity. And of course, we know what it's like to live on the Earth, which is what we call 1G. But there's only very short-term data on what it's like to be living at the moon's level of gravity. And we don't even know how to take the shape of the curve between 0 and 1 to what it would be like to live on Mars, which has even more gravity, but not as much as Earth. So it's really fascinating work that you're doing. And you've mentioned a little bit of your process. You have to think about the person who's going to have to wear your spacesuit, and I know that's part of how you design new things. But do you have any kind of general tips on what is it like to think like an engineer? What's your process?
Yeah, so one of the things I learned from my mentor was you don't have to know the answer from the beginning. We're doing new and different things. We're solving problems people have never solved before. So nobody knows the answer. And so the thing is just to start trying. So come up with an idea, come up with 5 ideas, and then figure out how to pick which one's actually going to work. And maybe that means building all 5. And I'm not talking about build. I'm talking about start with cardboard. And just try to see which one works the best for you. And if a couple of them work good, well, then you build those in plywood, and then you see if that works and which one is better, and what do you like, and when you try to practice using it, so what do you find out you need to do differently. And then eventually you're going to build one to really try, so you make it out of metal or something, and you actually use it as you would want to use it. And you get folks like the astronauts or geologists if you're doing geology, and you ask them to do their job using your hardware, and they give you feedback, and you take that feedback and you iterate until you're done. And one of the tricksy things about engineers is we keep making it better. So if you want to practice being an engineer, take something that you have in your home and figure out how to make it better. Or take an idea about a job you want to be able to do and come up with 5 ideas about how you would do that, and then figure out how to pick which one was going to actually work best. There's different ways to do it.
That's excellent advice. And because SciArtExchange is interested in getting everyone engaged and helping to solve our future challenges for space and science and technology. That's one of the reasons why we actually engage artists to come up with concepts like Consuelo Piccinino did for our Project Mars competition. What's it going to look like in the future? And of course, the artists who do the best are the ones who are doing their homework and trying to learn what are you as the engineer going to need to be thinking about during that design process, and come up with the balance of all the needs. So it's really been great talking to you and thinking like a spacesuit engineer. So I really appreciate your talking with us today.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to everybody, and I hope everybody's having a good time and staying safe, and come be spacesuit engineers with us. We're looking for help.
It sounds like a lot of fun. So be ready for them to all be knocking on your door. So thank
Okay.
you so much, Amy.
Yep. Thank you.